So today we're talking all about what kind of PCOS you are, or are you? Are you? But not in the way that you might think. So a lot of people might be thinking, okay, am I going to be like a lean PCOS or someone that gains weight with PCOS? Or maybe am I an insulin resistant PCOS or a stress PCOS? But that's not what we mean here. What we mean is, what level of help do you need to get the outcome you want, and also what outcome do you want, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are you looking for, and therefore who's going to be the best person to help you, and what kind of level of interaction do you need with them to get that outcome?
Yeah, we talk about this a lot, about the different clients that we interact with and how some of them might really need that extra support, or, they really want accountability, or they might have something specific that we work through with them, whereas there are other clients who don't tend to need as much support from us. They kind of might have goals that aren't as like time consuming or as needed as much attention. So I think, it's really interesting that, I think everyone might hear this and be like, am I a type this or a type that? Because that's so what's referred to in PCOS, and we're used to kind of talk about it in types as well. But this is more about where are you at with your PCOS and where do you want to go with your PCOS?
Yeah. And I think this is just as important as that what's driving your PCOS, because we've got to have both in order to achieve the goal. Because you could be, know that what's driving your PCOS is insulin resistance and or stress, and so once you know that, then you know the changes. But if you're someone that really needs accountability, or you've actually also got a thyroid condition that we really need to, we need to understand if you do, and you've got some symptoms of, and we really need to get that tested and get you onto some medication in order to then see the improvements in the other stuff. So that's really important to know, a really important part of the picture as well, not just what your drivers are.
As well as how much time do you have to achieve the goal that you want. I think that's like a huge part too. So, if it's something like, I do really want to see my skin clear up and my hirsutism go down, but it's not by a certain time. I just want to see that happen kind of naturally, versus this is actually getting me down and I need to sort this immediately. Or I'd like to get my cycles back because I just want to feel more healthy by having like a more regular cycle. Or actually, I've been trying for a baby for like 3 years now and I still don't have a cycle, and how much more time do I have to kind of give to that goal, So I think that this is kind of, all of these factors kind of create different sort of types of
profiles of who you are and what you need and what's going to get
and
you,
what level of support you need.
Absolutely. So to make this a bit more real life, we're going to talk about a few case studies of patients that we've had, just to give some examples of this happening in real life. So I think the one that you had this morning is a really good starting point. So I came into the office this morning and I said, how was your initial call this morning to Emma? And Emma was like, oh my God, it was amazing. And we just chatted about this, and then I was like, we really need to share this on a podcast, because I think it's so interesting for you guys listening to understand which level of service might work best for you.
Yeah. So this morning I had a my initial consult with an Ovie Plus member, and so that means that they're on a 3-month membership with us at Ovie, and they get an initial consult, a follow-up consult, and then one more consult after that quarterly. So this means that they get that little bit extra like one-on-one support,
as well as all the Ovie all the Ovie lessons and all the resources in Ovie. So it's like the Ovie pathway plus additional one-on-one support.
Yeah. And so going into this, I'd had a look at, what this patient had written for her questionnaire answers. So we ask, a questionnaire on your first lesson when you're in Ovie to really understand what is happening for you, what symptoms are showing up, and really understand how we can help deliver you the right lessons in your Ovie app. So I had a look through her questionnaire before we caught up, and I could see she really strongly presented with some insulin resistance symptoms. She really strongly presented with some thyroid symptoms, although hadn't had a diagnosis or hadn't done any testing of this, as well as stress was like a huge driver for her as well. So with all of that kind of picture in mind, I went into the initial consult with a bit of an idea about what we might talk about. I could see that one of her symptoms was hirsutism, but it was really interesting. We actually got into the conversation and she said, my acne is just getting out of control and my hirsutism as well. And, acne wasn't something that had initially flagged, but being able to have that one-on-one discussion, we were able to talk about that. And so she said, it's actually quite good timing. I've got a dermatologist appointment booked and I'll get some blood tests before that. I'm not sure what they're going to look at, but they want to do some blood tests because they want me to go on Roaccutane, or that's kind of what I've decided. And so I thought, oh yeah, that's interesting. Like, that makes sense. Acne, Roaccutane is a really powerful medication that you might do for, say, around, sort of like antibiotics, but you might do it for 6 months, say, or 3 months that you're on Roaccutane to really try and reduce the severity of the acne. It really dries out your skin.
My understanding is the way that it works is that it shrinks the sebum gland, right, the oil-producing gland in your skin, and therefore, if you were not, one of the reasons that PCOS causes acne is that our testosterone hormone stimulates our oil gland, our sebum gland, to overproduce oil. If that then becomes the pore gets clogged, then there's a clogged pore, and that often leads to an infection, which then leads to an acne pustule. So that's why shrinking that sebum gland can be really helpful for actually improving the acne.
Yeah, completely. So she'd kind of gone, look, this is getting too much. I need to go on some sort of medication. But I'd also heard about spironolactone, which is another medication that can be used for acne. But I've been told by my doctor that if I'm on spironolactone, I'm on it for life. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's interesting. And that's probably like a really good thing that your doctor said to you to let you know that actually spironolactone only works when you're on the medication. So as soon as you come off it, those symptoms will come back again. So I thought, great, interesting that the doctor has told you that, but maybe they haven't told you the full truth of why that is. And that's because what is really driving that acne is just getting masked by spironolactone, as opposed to it creating any real change. So effect isn't maintained when you come off the medication. So she had kind of heard this, thought, I don't want to be on a medication for life. Roaccutane sounds like the one for me. And so it was really great, actually, that we were able to sit down and have this discussion and be like, well, that might be the case, but when we're going to be working on actually what's driving this acne behind the scenes and doing all that lifestyle change in the Ovie app with your lessons that you're going to be having, potentially spironolactone actually could be a short-term option for you as well. It's not just going to work on your acne, it's also going to work on the hirsutism too. So it's going to give you, attack 2 symptoms at one time. We can see it as a short-term option because we might be on it for 6 or 12 months and wean off it as we work on the background piece. And we're not going to see huge side effects that come along with a drug like Roaccutane, which actually can cause extreme drying out of the skin cells. And I mean, there's links and ties to lots of other quite more serious things, like depression and gut issues and all sorts.
Suicide risk, which comes along with the mental health stuff. And that's absolutely nothing these are not small risks, right? These are life-altering risks as well, especially the mental health stuff. A lot of people say that the mental health stuff persisted even after they stopped the Roaccutane.
Yeah, and I mean, I did 2 rounds of Roaccutane when I was at high school, both times over summer as well, which is what this patient would be looking to do being in the UK. And so I know how hard that was to manage, the drying out skin, but as well, and I mean, we don't know, it's a correlation thing, not a causation thing, but my mental health and my gut issues propped up the moment that I finished my first round of Roaccutane. And I've battled with gut issues and anxiety and mental health things since being on this medication. So my personal effect is they're very real risks. And that's not to say that I wasn't the perfect storm for some of these things for other reasons beforehand, but it's not to say that, you just shrug your shoulders and think, oh, that won't happen to me. Yeah,
exactly. And I think the other thing too to understand with Roaccutane and PCOS is that very likely isn't a one-time thing. Like you were saying, you needed it 2 rounds. And I think this is what this patient was saying was, I can do Roaccutane, it's a one-time fix-all, and then I can move on. Whereas the Spiro, I have to stay on. Whereas once you'd had the conversation with her, you were like, well, actually the research supports that in PCOS especially, that people tend to have to do multiple rounds. It might be effective for a year or a year and a half, and then they start to see this cropping back up. Because again,
there's still that driver there.
Yeah, there's nothing, Roaccutane is not, yes, it might be shrinking the sebum gland, but it's not fixing the problem, which is the testosterone, right? And so the testosterone is going to keep driving that and driving that oil production. So it's not to say that it's not the right solution for anybody. It possibly is, but it would be alongside the lifestyle treatment as well, to try and ensure that the effects do last a bit longer.
Yeah, and so I think just having this, it wasn't even a long conversation, but it was just that conversation to give her like the reassurance and more information around what all of her options were, or what being, I guess, us being PCOS experts, what we see being in PCOS specifically the best option or the most effective options, and what's really worth your time, or what's the best thing to jump into first. So I think this is where, whilst Ovie is amazing, and we didn't even touch on the lifestyle changes she'll be making, that she'll be learning through all of her lessons, like her breakfast and this, and to target all the insulin piece, and her stress management tools that she'll be working on to target her high stress. This was a completely side conversation for her goal, which was really just getting on top of her hirsutism and her acne. And it was just that extra level of like deep diving, and I could just see the relief in her eyes as we were like coming, like it was washing over her as we were having this conversation. And I was like, we're like onto the right thing. Yeah,
absolutely. Because I think that's the point, and the ability that we have, having worked in this condition for such a long time and having so much experience just in this condition, is that we're thinking about this in terms of how PCOS actually functions. Like, whereas your doctor, likely they're not a PCOS specialist, so they're just thinking acne Roaccutane. Like, this is the most effective, and it's like, okay, cool. Like, that's one option, but these are all the things that or the alternatives. And again, he's thinking, oh, okay, like just telling you, well, you're going to need to be on Spiro for life. And it's like, but not if we necessarily work on the underlying drivers of your PCOS, your insulin, your stress, and your thyroid, which you also did pick up with this patient as well, that she had lots of symptoms and a strong family history.
So she kind of said, oh, I think maybe it's been looked at by other doctors, but the tests have always said it's fine. And so she's going to go back and get a full thyroid panel, because potentially they've just looked at TSH. So we're going to look at thyroid antibodies as well. We also are going to look at some of her nutrients, because she's getting a lot of fatigue too. And then the other one she mentioned, and it was just in passing, she said, oh yeah, my symptoms are actually getting really worse again. They always seem to get worse in spring. And I just thought, okay, I think vitamin D potentially could be a driver here, because we know low levels of vitamin D can really exacerbate the PCOS symptoms. And if you've just come out of winter, those levels are most likely low. But then it was interesting, you and I had another catch up, as we said, we were chatting about this consult, which is another thing we do. We don't just isolate, we don't just think about our patients in the one slot that we see them. You and I talk back and forth about these sorts of, plus or premium plus consults that we have and patients we have, because we're so invested in seeing results. And also too, it's like we know that we can both offer different alternative views. When you said that vitamin D, I was like, oh my god, so true, but I would not have put that together. My brain immediately went to histamine intolerance, which you didn't. So it's like it's so good being able to get a few different opinions and then be able to offer patients alternative or explanations, and looking into what could be going wrong. That's it. We're just there to kind of help you dig deeper and really give you that kind of expert view and that holistic view of what is happening in your entire health. So all of this happened in our 20-minute initial consult, which was incredible. We've picked up all these things to look into, all these different concepts to touch on, and then I'm going to catch up with her in another 3 or 4 weeks for her follow-up consult, which is a 30-minute consult, to look at those blood tests, decide what we're going to do moving forward there. understand where she's gone with her probably Spiro and how that's kind of affecting, and then yeah, I'm sure we're going to uncover or dig up or get into even more deeper stuff in the next 2 consults, which is so exciting because it's not just is she getting those incredible driver changes in her app, but she's getting this like hyper-personalized expert support too. Yeah.
And I mean, this is the whole reason we created Ovie as well, is because when I started working just in PCOS, I was quickly overwhelmed by the number of patients that I had and couldn't help them all. And I was like, okay, well, what am I seeing here? And what I was seeing was that I was spending most of my time telling patients the same thing. And I was like, actually, I can create like videos and resources to help actually spend the time helping someone make the change, because it's all very well to say, okay, you've got insulin resistance, you need to eat like this, or your stress hormones are really high and you need to focus on actually reducing exercise. It's all very well to say that, but people need a lot more time and context to actually digest that information and implement that information.
And I was curious, like we want to know why. So rather than just, if you've got only a 1 hour consult or something, you pretty much only have time to kind of like get out the what, not the why. Yeah,
exactly. And I did find that it was so important. It was so important for me to understand why I was doing something, to really engage with it. Otherwise I'd be like, I don't really know if this is true and like why I'm doing this. Like, this woman's told me that I've got insulin resistance, but actually, like, I'm an athlete. I'm super healthy. Yes, I'm gaining a bit of weight, but I'm not at a higher body weight. And so for me, it was really important to understand, okay, this is what insulin resistance is. These are the symptoms that I'm presenting with that do show that. And this is why I can actually have developed that without, that weight is almost... doesn't really come into the equation in terms of developing that. Like, you can still have insulin resistance even when you're lean and all that kind of information, but that takes so much time. And so
that's like hours of learning. And so that's really where, like you said, rather than seeing a person one-on-one and kind of regurgitating the same information for them, it's like, well, how can I package this that's like moving with the modern tech world anyway, and deliver it to people as and when they need it. They don't have to wait for an appointment for me on a wait list. They can have that information straight away, and then beyond there we can follow up with more support. And so that's, I guess, kind of like the evolution of all that you've done is the Ovie app. That is all of those important why, how, what changes. Yeah.
And then all the resources that we've seen that, that I needed, that patients needed, that you needed in your own health journey. Like, okay, I just need someone to tell me what recipes I can make. I need someone to tell me or help me, make it easy for me, what exercises I can do from home, whether I'm like postpartum or pregnant or like recovering from an injury or what have you. And also all of those little FAQs and questions that might crop up at those times. Like, well, what about, this protein powder, or does this work for me? And so being able to have that on demand in an app just means that you can progress so quickly, and you're not paying for our time to tell you that. It's like you can learn that at your own pace, and then we can spend the time that you're actually paying one-on-one with us to really dive deeper into the things that are super important to you, like really specific, like the medication chat, or the like what tests I need your doctor to do, or write the referral letter to your doctor to get that, because that's what we spend a lot of our time doing as well, is actually writing these so that you have the information, or it's not just you having to explain to your doctor about what you need. There's a referral letter that they can refer to, and then build on that conversation with you from there. So this is why we built Ovie. This is why we then have different levels of support as well, because it means that you can then self-serve the stuff that's good to be able to self-serve, like good to be able to watch in your own time and watch at the level that you need to, or the kind of the depth that you need to.
Daily interaction as well. So that's the thing with Ovie, is you get these like daily lessons that come through. So you're digesting it at a pace that's like implementable, and you get that constant influx of similar information. So it's like you get that hand holding kind of in the sense of, I have something I'm taking every day that's reminding me to continue to make these lifestyle changes, build these habits, and it's not feeling overwhelming. And yeah, that's kind of like, you can get even at our standard plan. So our standard plan is all of that resource, all of the, you know, the workouts, the recipes, the daily lessons, the what, how, why, that all exists within the standard plan. And it's just those up levels with that one-on-one care that the premium and plus plans offer.
And those lessons are also hyper-personalised to you. So it's all based on the symptoms that you're presenting with and the drivers that you're presenting with. So at the start we ask you, as you said, a big clinical questionnaire to understand what are those symptoms, what's your main goals, and then also what are the other little symptoms that you have that tell us what your PCOS drivers are. And then your lessons are all based on those. So it's not just like, oh, this is a general kind of like recipe and workout app that
everyone's getting the same information. Like we know from, like we've said, working in the space for ages, everyone has different drivers, everyone has different symptoms. So Ovie, the app in general, like the standard plan, that is still so personalised, more personalised than anything I've seen in terms of PCOS healthcare. It's just that hyper personalised level is what you get in that one-on-one, I guess. And not just even personalised, but more just like discussion, conversation, back and forth, and accountability. Yeah,
exactly. And that then goes even more in depth. So that was one example, one case study. Another case study that I was talking to you about last week was another that I have on Premium Plus plan, and she's been really struggling with weight for a lot of her life, and then also more recently really struggling with hormonal imbalances, especially some of the symptoms that we might associate with perimenopause or menopause. And so she was really looking, because she's been struggling with weight all her life, was really looking for that. I just need someone to tell me exactly what to do to guarantee that this is going to work. I will happily follow along, but I just need to know that absolutely this is going to work, that you're not going to give up on me, that I'm not a lost cause, and that this is going to work, and that you're going to be there for those kind of like regular check-ins to ensure that it is absolutely working. But also too, to figure out that there's nothing else that's causing this, because I have been struggling with this all my life. And so I want to make sure that there's nothing else like a thyroid condition or a hormone imbalance like perimenopause that's now going to stop me from losing weight. So she had been working with a specialist hormone doctor, but had actually found that her symptoms had gotten worse since working with her. So it was kind of a bit of that, like, oh my God, I don't know where to turn to next. And I just want you to fix this. And so we've been working on that. What I found was that actually the hormone doctor had probably incorrectly assessed that she's going into perimenopause. I think this can be a hard one with PCOS because a lot of people's cycles are quite irregular anyway. And so it was quite hard for the hormone doctor to actually identify that she may not have actually been really going into perimenopause, or was at the start, but she'd treated her similarly to the way that she's treated other women going into perimenopause, and combined like estrogen and progesterone, when in actual fact this woman did not need estrogen, and that was really making her symptoms worse. And in actual fact, when I got her to take an estrogen test at the time that I needed her to take it, at the exact right time of her cycle, we found that the results came back and it was like the estrogen was in the thousands. And it was like, whoa, okay, this is not good. Turned out actually that test was incorrect, because she got a finger prick test and she had potentially been using the estrogen cream on her hands, and that was why it was so high. But so we retested that again, but it was still way too high, and this was why she was getting a lot of these symptoms. So I wrote to her doctor and I said, this is what I think is going on. I actually think that she doesn't need this, and we worked together really closely and actually got her on the right hormone. Actually, for a while, we actually stopped all hormone to see what her levels were like normally, and then figured out that actually she probably required some progesterone, or progesterone would be helpful, and just got her on that. And since then, her PMS symptoms have been so much better. Like before, she was getting really anxious pre-period, really, really irritable, and also had some breast tenderness, which was a new symptom to her. And that was why I was like, okay, these that is not the right response that you should be having when on these meds. So the other thing too we've been able to find is that indeed she has had like a thyroid condition as well, which is what we suspected. And so just making sure that we're getting her on the right treatment for that to enable the weight loss to happen. But I would say that it wasn't necessary for the weight loss to happen. She started to lose weight before we even got those test results back. But what was really important was actually getting her onto the right plan for weight loss, whereas previously she'd been told like just basically cut calories, all the standard advice, whereas that was not the right method for her. She was actually already eating very little, and so
can't reduce from little.
Yes, you can't. It's like how they say you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't lose weight from an empty cup either. Tell you that.
Yeah.
So that's where
you can't eat less than 500 calories.
Yeah.
That's all you're eating.
You can't eat less if your cup's already empty. Yeah. So it is. Yeah, it's really been really important to get her on that right plan, and since then actually weight loss has been very easy for her, which makes me so happy like that we've been able to achieve that for her, but also makes me so sad that she's had to go her whole life fighting this when the answer is actually relatively simple. It's not simple, it's complex, but it is also, once we know what we're doing, it is still relatively simple.
Yeah, you just kind of think she's been passed around and just failed like every time. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
It actually makes me so emotional. The thing that she said to me a couple of times is, I know, she's like, I just want you to tell me you're not going to give up on me.
Yeah.
And I honestly, it just makes me so sad that
that's been her experience.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to make me
But you know that you could go. She's an incredible woman, and the fact that she could feel that people have just given up on her by saying there's nothing more I can do for you is just heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So love her to bits, and just so happy that she's been on that. But it hasn't been a linear journey. Like, okay, we've just got you on. There's been times where she's, we check in and things haven't gone well. And I think that's the real benefit of having that really regular contact, is that we can quickly ascertain what's happened and put the steps in place to right that, rather than her going down the track of feeling huge guilt and shame that hasn't, because that's been a part of her weight loss journey, is feeling a lot of this guilt and shame. And so, feeling that, making sure that we step in and correct that really quickly and correct that mindset has been so monumental in helping to keep her going, because her weight loss journey is going to be going for quite a while, and so it's not just like a quick fix, like a 6-week challenge or something like that. This is going to be many months for her, and it has already been many months. And this is what I've realised with working with all of my patients one-on-one really closely alongside in that Premium Plus plan, is that we all kind of go through a very similar journey, especially with weight loss, where it starts, and then there will be a period of time where we hit kind of a crisis point. It can be something that happens, like family comes to visit, and Christmas or like something that derails you, and then you just need that support to kind of reset, get back onto like making those towards moves, and then you're right again. But it is really crucial to have that someone who can kind of stop the spiral.
And it's interesting, like you look at Weight Watchers in their old model, and it was a weekly or fortnightly weigh-in, which obviously we don't agree with, because weight means nothing in the whole scheme of things. Even though it's called weight loss, we're not looking at weight as such. But they had that weigh-in, and it's not that was right, and feeling the intense peer pressure in front of everyone to have weighed in and to have lost weight, but more than just like that constant accountability, I think, as well, and that constant check-in is like quite motivating. So I think whilst Weight Watchers had it kind of in the more negative, not so helpful camp, that whole knowing that it's going to be a wee while, but that having that like weekly check-in concept or bi-weekly check-in concept, there is merit to having those check-ins.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just, it needs to be a more supportive, okay, what do we need? Like you said, how can we course correct every 2 weeks, or make sure that we're on the right track, or that you just feel, again, like she said, supported, held, not left behind.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is that I'd reframe it that it's not accountability, it is support.
Yeah.
And that's what I've really seen, is that we don't need accountability. Most of us, if we're making a call about what we want to do, we're invested in that. And especially if you're investing in someone to work with you over that time, you're already invested financially. And so you're going to, that's not where I see my patients needing it. I see that they need that support to help just do that kind of like root cause investigation when maybe things aren't going so well. So making sure that we take that weight off your shoulders and figuring out, okay, this is not working because of these reasons and this is what you need to do. But also too, it's just that we can really get in there and figure out and just give you that also that reassurance that, okay, don't worry about it. This thing happens to everybody. Everybody goes through the same journey. Don't worry. Like, everybody has these crisis points, and it's just a matter of reframing and making those towards moves again and not spiraling. And I think that's because if people have previously maybe had a similar kind of experience to the Weight Watchers, where they've gone like, oh, accountability, I'm going to see my coach, and it's like a fear of like, actually, I'm not going to turn up because Claire's going to be so disappointed in me. And it's like,
and that's it, it's never disappointment. Like, that's not the feeling. It's just like, oh my gosh, how can we continue to help you? How can we hold you more? Obviously you've really struggled with this, like, what can we do to give you even more reassurance, or
or tools or tips, or like, because often that is, it's just like, oh my god, this has happened and I've just got this really intense period of work happening at the moment and I'm just so flat out, and I've also got small children, or I've got like, I'm looking after a like elderly parent or something like that, and it's like, okay, cool, how can we make things super quick and easy for you to stay on track with what we're doing, but also meaning that we can achieve it in the time that you actually have available, and not, I think the other thing too is not overwhelm you like with that mental load, because that's mostly it. It's like, I'm so busy with all these other stuff, I just don't have the mental capacity to think about this at the moment. It's like, cool, how do we take that away from you so you don't even have to think about it? Like, okay, should we like use a meal kit delivery service for now? Okay, this one's going to work for you, here you go. And then it's like amazing how sometimes it's just someone having to problem solve there and going, cool, no problem, let's do this.
Take the mental load off it. And it's interesting. I'm thinking about a patient that I saw on the old way that we used to work, where they kind of ad hoc booked appointments, and so she had booked a couple of appointments with me, and we'd made small strides towards making some changes and things like that, but there was always a bit of a gap between seeing her, and then didn't see her for a while. Maybe it was like I caught up with her in December, and then I only just heard back maybe like early April from her. And in this time she kind of was like, everything's gone out the window, everything gone back to scratch, my parents came down for Christmas, I just went back into my old ways, and I just haven't been able to not have, you know, like, I think her thing was like, she was really just lived off takeaways. Like, takeaways was her thing. She enjoys it, but also it was just easy. She runs her own business. It was like a mental load thing. And so she'd gotten like quite good at cooking breakfast and doing a couple of other things. I think we even trialed like a meal kit and things. But coming into Christmas, I think the kids weren't super interested in the meal kit, and then the parents came, and then everything went out the window. And so, but it was like not having that kind of constant catch up, where I think she kind of, it took her 3 months from Christmas to kind of build back up, I guess, the confidence to come talk to me, because maybe there was a fear around that, because there had been such a gap in communication, as well as it just, there not being like course corrections immediately. Like, I wasn't able to support her through that because I didn't have that regular catch up with her. And so I think she's someone who would really benefit from being on this higher touch, kind of more guaranteed plan, because she knows she wants to do it. And, you know, the first thing that we just changed one thing going forward, because obviously the overwhelm of too many changes had kind of like derailed her as well. But I think, like you said, it's having that like constant check-in to course correct, feel supported, know that you're like working towards the goal.
Totally. And this is what all the research says too, especially in PCOS, is that showing that there needs to be frequent initial contact and then regular like catch-ups at intervals until at least a year. And then after a year, people tend to be a lot more be self-sufficient with that. And not in a, like, you can't be self-sufficient prior, but just because you build the confidence and the routines and the habits and things. And so that's why in the Plus plan, that's exactly the way that we've designed it, is like frequent initial consults and then every like quarterly check-ins, just to make sure that there is a dedicated time that we're going to check in to course correct if there's been some struggles or also just that reassurance, like, cool, great, your symptoms are all tracking exactly the way that we would expect and things are going really well, keep going, no change is required, just keep going, and then we'll check in again in another couple of months to make sure that there has been nothing that pops up, because there does, like as you said, it can be in the most unexpected times as well. Like I think around Christmas is quite expected, but
you never know when like a family member might be sick, or and you know, if it's say a parent that, you know, a lot of the care lands on you, that can be hugely uprooting for your life, and you might have them move in with you, or you might have to move in with them for a while, or if you're trying to manage kids alongside that, you can obviously see how you become the lowest priority in that factor.
And that's where it just requires someone to have a bit of an outside perspective to be like, that's okay, these things happen. How do we use the little time that you do have to be most effective? Like, what do we focus on? You might now only be able to focus on 2 changes instead of previously 4. Okay, what are the most important for you, and how do we make sure that we, you know, do that as effectively as possible and make sure that we make that as sustainable for you as possible?
Yeah.
So then another one that you had as well was another on the Plus plan, and this was where she had quite a specific goal around her wedding, right?
Yeah. So she kind of had 2 goals. She knew she wanted to get pregnant, but she knew she had a wedding coming up in the new year as well. So she kind of had these 2 goals, and so we sort of actually had to have a lot of communication around, well, what do these timelines look like? And I think that's the piece as well. We're having that consult and that time to discuss what actually are your expectations around this and what means the most to you, or what's kind of like a fixed timeline. And so we kind of boiled it down to, well, actually feeling good and being healthy for her wedding was her priority, because that had a fixed timeline. But that didn't mean to say that we had forgotten about the goal that she wanted to have a baby. But we knew by doing these changes and getting her insulin working better and making her feel better and all of those pieces would contribute to more regulating her cycle as well, which was going to set her up to be in a far more fertile state, I guess, when she came to want to try. So we kind of knew, hey, this is what we're going to focus on first, and we did work through like a wee weight loss process, and having those, again, like regular check-ins really helped her to be like, maybe I think she hit a weight loss plateau at one point, so having that ability to kind of be like, okay, why might that have happened? What can we do from here to continue to see a little bit more weight loss leading into your wedding? And then how can we also reverse you back out of that so that you're not feeling like you're restrictive or anything like that around your wedding, you know, and and also that it's going to be super easy for you to maintain that weight loss, because that is the biggest problem with weight loss, is actually how do I maintain it. And I mean, it's interesting, so I was just doing some research this morning for our podcast that we're going to be doing on, it's a refresher on the trendy weight loss drugs. I mean, they're trendy for a reason. They're like super effective, but it's like one of the problems is that, like with Mounjaro, like, yes, it's really effective. It shows about a 20% weight loss, but as soon as you stop it, you gain back 15% of, well, you know, 15%.
Yeah. So it's like,
and so it's what, a 5% difference.
Yeah. And also that's, you know, you probably actually do gain that back. It's just that the study stopped potentially. And so this is always the issue, is actually how do we maintain it? And this is where we're like experts at, because again, we don't want you to do that, because that's going against all of the things that we're trying to achieve for you, which is overall health, overall like fertility. And so, you know, same thing, if your 2 goals are fertility and weight loss, like you go somewhere else and they're like, oh yeah, you need to eat 800 calories. Well,
that's not going to help you fertility.
No, certainly not. Your body's going to go, cool, well, the one thing that's going to go is ovulation or like good levels of progesterone. And so we actually need to make sure that when we're doing that we're doing it in like the healthiest way.
And I think that that's a really common sentiment, as people have present with both, or potentially they've been told by a fertility clinic, we can't help you until you lose weight. But don't give any guidance around that. And often they might be doing, you know, these intense 800 calorie diets, but that, again, like we said, can only further affect their like fertility as well, and you know, they're getting a lack of nutrients and all these things. So I think whilst they're quite opposing goals in some senses, when you're not supported through those in a more like, or more nourishing kind of way, like, and that's where we look at weight loss, and we do not want anyone eating anything, you know, we want people eating double 800 calories or more, you know, like during the lowest that they'll go, and so that they're not missing out on nutrients, they're not shutting down their ovulation, they're not doing all of these things that actually aren't helping your health. And I think that's where like the weight loss and the fitness industry has really got a warped perspective, because you think the more extreme I am, the more success I'll have, but that's not necessarily in favor of like health. And health is what actually we need for pregnancy. We need to be nourished, we need to have like an abundance of energy and things like that to be able to have good quality eggs and grow and maintain a baby. But that's quite at odds with like the stark and extremeness of like often the weight loss industry. Absolutely,
it is super warped, because also too, it's not even about like, when it comes to fertility, even things like your energy and fatigue and hunger, you know, and those things you can sustain feeling like really tired and really hungry for a few weeks, but no more than a few weeks. And so therefore that's why you're just gonna not be able to stick with it. You're gonna then gain that weight again, and then we see this yo-yo weight effect, which is actually, the research shows, way more damaging for your health long term than not losing weight at all to start with.
So it's just like having that plus plan and that like check-in and that ability to discuss really what's the goals, really what are the timelines, and then what can we do, best practice, like
exactly. And also too, that problem solve when things happen. It's not going to like plan, like the weight loss plateau, or cycles aren't getting shorter, or things you've been trying to conceive and time, you know, been doing everything right, but it's been now like 6 months and stuff, nothing's working.
Like, how can we investigate more in that space too? So
exactly, and figure out like, okay, what's the problem? And also to work alongside fertility treatments, right? Because we know that fertility treatments are more effective when you do the lifestyle component as well. So it's like, we're agnostic. We're not going to say to you, don't do fertility treatments, or if you do fertility treatments you've failed, or anything like that. It's like, cool, that's what you want to do, awesome, we'll help you alongside that and make them more effective.